Thank you. And I am a volunteer at the Everett Jewish Life Center. If you have been here before, you've heard this speech before, I apologize in advance, but it's really important. You know that the Everett Jewish Life House on the Chicago campus is our home for all things Jewish. We explore Jewish food, music, politics, anti-Semitism, history, literature, comedy, and on and on. We provide an opportunity to learn, laugh, and explore our interests together. At a time when anti-Semitism is on the rise and Jews are feeling vulnerable, places like the Everett Center provide a venue for Jews and the larger community to examine some of the very important issues affecting the Jewish community. We are an important community within the larger Chautauqua community. This is the Everett Center's 17th year. It was built through a generous donation by Edith Everett and her family to memorialize her husband Henry. It was Edith's vision to create a Jewish denominational house with programs that would be free of charge and where rooms would be available to house guests. We have 5 rooms to rent. Edith's vision has been more than realized. We are proud that we have a very committed audience and we are thrilled to attract new guests. Our audience continues to grow in numbers. Who is here for the first time? That's it? Okay. Those that are not here for the first time probably ended up on the porch. Please do come and introduce yourself to those volunteers at the center. We are all wearing badges. I forgot mine. Our programs include a minimum of 2 and sometimes 3 talks per week, with Jewish-themed films also on Sunday and Wednesday. Our program brochures are available at the front entrance and on the porch, as are volunteer and suggestion forms. We are always looking for volunteers. We also welcome programming suggestions. If you want to help us, please let one of us know. Our programs and operations are fully dependent on your donations. We do not get any money from the institution. Your gate fees do not support our center. Your tax-deductible gift helps the Everett Center make ours a home for Jewish thinkers and seekers from all streams of Judaism. It is our honor and our mission to develop programs that spark curiosity, intellect, and imagination, infused with rich Jewish culture and tradition. To continue our mission to expand our programming and strengthen our community, we invite you to make a donation in any amount so that we can continue to offer programs without charge. We have envelopes in the lobby if you would like to make a donation. They may also be made online. Thank you. And now to our speaker. Jamie Metzl is one of the world's leading authorities on the implications of the intersection of AI, genetics, and biotechnology revolutions, and how governments, corporations, organizations, and individuals can ride the wave of these unprecedented transformations to build their best possible futures. A technology and healthcare futurist and geopolitical expert, he is the author of the international bestseller, Hacking Darwin, Genetic Engineering and the Future of Humanity. The sci-fi thrillers Genesis Code and Eternal Sonata, and his latest book, Superconvergence, How the Genetics, Biotech, and AI Revolutions Will Transform Our Lives, Work, and World. Jamie is also the founder and chair of the global social movement, One Shared World, a senior fellow of the Atlantic Council, a faculty member of Next Med Health, and a Singularity University expert. Jamie previously served in the U.S. National Security Council, State Department, Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and as a human rights officer for the United Nations in Cambodia. In 2019, he was appointed to the World Health Organization Expert Advisory Committee on Human Genome Editing. Called the original COVID-19 whistleblower, thank you, for his groundbreaking efforts calling for a full investigation into pandemic origins. Jamie was the lead witness in the March 2023 U.S. congressional hearing on COVID origins. He appears frequently on national and international media. His work has been featured by 60 Minutes, the New York Times, and most major media outlets across the globe. And his syndicated columns and other writing on science, technology, health, politics, and international affairs appear regularly in publications around the world. His short story, A Visit to Weizenbaum, was made into a 2021 short film source code. Jamie is a founder and board co-chair of the National Security Organization Partnership for a Secure America and a board member of the American University in Mongolia and Parsons Dance. He previously served on the boards of HIAS, Park University, and the International Center for Transitional Justice, and has been an election monitor in Afghanistan and the Philippines, and advised the government of North Korea on the establishment of special economic zones. Jamie is also a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and a former White House Fellow and Aspen Institute Crown Fellow. He holds a PhD from Oxford, a JD from Harvard Law School, and is a magna cum laude. Phi Kappa graduate of Brown University. With all that, it is my pleasure to introduce Jamie Metzl.
I'll have you know that my mother wrote that entire Carol just read it. Thank you so much to all of you. It's really my great pleasure to be back at Chautauqua. Thrilled to be here at the Everett House. Thanks to Arlene and Carol and everybody here. When I was here last year, when I was invited last year, I didn't know that much about Chautauqua, and I was invited to be the keynote speaker for AI Week in the amphitheater. And the second I stepped foot in Chautauqua, I thought, wow, this is the most magical, incredible, Brigadoon-like place in the world. So I was just absolutely thrilled to be invited back this year. And when I was invited, I spoke with a friend of mine in New York, Janice Shorenstein, and I said, I've been invited to the Everett House. She goes, oh, I know Edith. Edith is incredible, and she started talking about Edith and all the different things that Edith Everett does. And I said, wow, that's amazing. How old is she? Like 30, 35? And so it is entirely appropriate. I think I'm getting this right. She's 95 now? 96. That I have been invited to talk about the science of aging by somebody who's 96 years old. And if I was going to be additionally humbled that I, a mere 57, know anything about this subject, I was at breakfast in this table here, and our friend Norma was there, and Norma said, well, what are you here to talk about? I mean, well, I'm here to talk about the science of aging. She goes, oh, that's so great. I'd love to hear your tips on how to have healthy aging. I said, well, how old are you, Norma? And Norma, yesterday I had my 93rd birthday. And I said, Norma, I'd like to have you come to this talk, because I'm just going to sit over here, ask Norma what she did, and you should just do that. And Norma said, I'm really sorry, I'm not able to make it, because at the same time, there's a meeting for the Association for a Balanced Chautauqua, and I'm suspicious about what they're up to, and I better go to keep an eye on them. This is not a statement about the Association for a Balanced Chautauqua. I'm for a Balanced Chautauqua, but it is a statement about drive and purpose, which is really important. Not only that, then we had a conversation this morning at breakfast, and Norma, because this is, not to play into any stereotypes, but Norma said, you know, when you're over 90, you can get a season pass for free. Then we had actually a quite young guy who was sitting across from me at the table, which I'm not going to point any fingers, Harris. And they said, Harris, you know, if you're over 90, you can get a free pass. And Harris said, well, I already paid. I don't want them to know how old I am. The summary of all of this is if you want to know about what all of the science of aging indicates, if you sum it all up and say what is the greatest hack that you can do to make sure you have the longest and healthiest life possible according to the best science available, the good news is it's exactly what everybody in this room is already doing. You know what these things are. It's diet, it's exercise, it's community, it's not drinking very much, it's not eating too much unhealthy things, not too much red meat, all of these things, having a reason for being, this drive that Norma had, that I better go and check on these things over here. That's really, really important. I'm in this world where there are a lot of scientists and influencers, and sometimes it's a blurry boundary between science and influencers. And some of the people are doing really meaningful work on the biology of aging. And biology, that is the thesis of the main thesis of the work that I do now, and certainly it's the thesis of my new book, Superconvergence, which is that we are at this incredible moment in history. And the summary of what's so significant about this moment in history is that after nearly 4 billion years of evolution on Earth, our one species among the billions that has ever lived suddenly has the increasing ability to engineer novel intelligence and re-engineer life. Engineer novel intelligence and re-engineer life. So biology is increasingly hackable, and we're learning that. Last summer when I was here, I was speaking, unfortunately my father passed away over this last year, but I was speaking in my remarks about the way that we had taken his 1-year death sentence, and it turns out we got 2 extra years, so into a 3-year life sentence. And we really invested not just in having the time, but in using the time, which is the whole point of living healthier longer, is to do the meaningful stuff that you can with your life, with the people in your community. So I certainly believe that the science of hacking biology is very real. And alongside all of this hope and hype and fear, there are a lot of people who are riding this wave of hype in what I see as irresponsible ways. Raise your hand if you've heard of Brian Johnson. Does that mean anything to anybody? We've got 1, 2. So Brian Johnson is an acquaintance of mine, and he has now started this Don't Die movement. Yeah. 3, we're up to 3. So this, do I hear 4? So this Don't Die movement, Brian Johnson is saying, well, we can, and he spends about $3 million a year with all these blood tests and doctors and all of these kinds of things, and he's saying, well, we can live forever. And now he's certainly very wealthy already, but he's selling products, and olive oils, and all of these kinds of things. Everybody is going to die. It's built into our biology. It's built into life. But there are also, it's not just people who are tech entrepreneurs. I mean, a friend of mine at Harvard Medical School, highly credentialed, basic scientist, has done incredible work with mice, and he's giving these mice these NAD plus boosters. Raise your hand if you've heard of NAD plus boosters, NMN or NR. Raise your hand if you've heard of any of those things. All right, 1. So there are a lot of people, and so David has a podcast, and he says, well, I'm not a doctor, but here's what I'm doing. And there are all these companies that are selling these supplements, which is based on work that is happening with mice and roundworms, and as we all know, humans are not big mice. So there's a lot of hype, there are a lot of claims that are being made. So my basic macro point is the basic science of hacking aging is real. But a lot of the applied stuff, the fancy applied stuff that people are imagining, these stem cell transfers that are going to rejuvenate everything, things that I write about in my own science fiction, those things may be true on some day, but they're not yet true. And so kind of key message, and I'll fill this in behind, is everybody in this room should double down on being great Chautauquans. do all of the things that you already know. You don't need me to tell you about the blue zone stuff. I mean, you probably all already know it, either exactly or generally. But I get these questions every time after sessions like this, like, should I be taking metformin? Should I be taking rapamycin? There are all these kinds of things. And so my general view is caution until things are proven. But now let's take a big step back and talk about this broader field of the science of aging. So the reason why this field is of such interest is that we humans have cared about aging and hacking aging for a long time, because this is the Everett Jewish house. I think some people will know the oldest man mentioned in the Bible is? Methuselah died at the age of? 969. So they have in the Bible, they have Methuselah, it's begat, and all those begats, it's like 900 and 950, and then I think they realized, whoever the authors were, and I'll talk about that tomorrow, whoever realized, well, geez, if we're talking about these guys living to 969, and everyone's saying, well, why am I not living to 969? So, and then they like somebody put in a thing, but then they decreed that 120 is the max. So in the Bible, you get 120. The oldest known work of literature in the recorded history is? No? Older. Gilgamesh, exactly. So Gilgamesh, about 3,000 years old, Gilgamesh is the king of Uruk. And Gilgamesh is like a wild man, and he has his best friend. And then his best friend dies, and then Gilgamesh goes crazy because he starts to discover mortality. And so he starts asking, well, what can I do to beat mortality? And then they say, well, there's this man who survived this ancient flood, and he has this plant, and if you get this plant, you can live forever. So Gilgamesh goes, that's what the Epic of Gilgamesh is about. He goes on this great journey to get this plant, and he gets it, and he doesn't. This is what I said, don't take all these experimental drugs. Gilgamesh could have just taken the plant right then, and then we would have a different story, but he didn't do that. He thought, you know what, I'm going to take this plant back to Uruk, because maybe it's dangerous. Rather than me taking it, I'm going to find some old guy, and I'm going to make the old guy take it, and if it works for that guy, then I'll take it. So he's coming back, and there's another lesson. If you're coming back with this magical plant for eternal youth, and you go swimming, don't just leave it on the side of the river. If this happens to you, if it happens there, just make sure that you get somebody to watch your magic plant, because he goes, and then a snake comes, and it eats his plant, and the snake lives forever, and Uruk goes back, and he realizes his mortality, which is the lesson of all of our story here today. And then in every civilization, the Chinese has the magic mushrooms for immortality. In India, there's Amrita, which is this magical plant that you can eat for eternal. And maybe some of you have been to or heard of the town of Amritsar, which is a beautiful town in India, which is named after this. And then in more modern cultures, there's been all of these, not just fables, but false sciences. And whether it's the Fountain of Youth, or in the late 19th century, there was this idea that if somebody went to Egypt and they saw these eunuchs that were wasting away, and so they thought, well, it must be that there's something in testicles that give people vigor. And so for about 20 years, there was this theory that if you took the testicles of monkeys and cut them off and ground them up and injected them into people, people would live forever. And it didn't work, and they said, well, the doses are wrong. So it was really 20 years. And literally, they were setting up in Africa these massive monkey refuges for these castrated monkeys. So there's been a lot of craziness because we have been so desperate for this thing. And we can understand it because we all treasure life. That's why we're here. That's why we're seizing this moment and all of these moments being together here at Chautauqua. And the nice thing is that over time, even with all of these mythologies, our lives have extended in very meaningful and profound ways. So our ancestors, who were hunter-gatherers, the average lifespan of our pre-agrarian ancestors was about 18 years old. 18, average. That doesn't mean that everybody dropped dead at 19 when you have high infant mortality, and so you can bring those numbers down. But that's still really, really low. At the height of the Roman Empire, average lifespan was just 25. In 1900, in the United States, average lifespan was 47. Now it's just around 80. So over the last century, we've gotten 3 months of extra average life per year. And that's pretty incredible. And how have we done it? We've done it through healthcare and public health and nutrition and worker safety and all of these kinds of things that now feel like blocking and tackling. And now actually we're going backwards on issues like vaccination. But we're really revolutionary. And the one thing that I will say, and it's very important to me to say this, when we talk about life extension, there are 2 ways to think about it. One is individual life extension, and one is average life extension. And we're going to focus a little more on individual life extension here. But I think that our bigger focus should be on average lifespan. Because I live in New York City, if I just get on the 4-5 train, it is literally a 15-minute, 10-minute subway ride to a zip code that has a 20-year lower average lifespan than my zip code on the Upper East Side. So that's 20 years in a 10-minute subway ride. So certainly we should focus on these issues, but the easiest win for us is to say, well, who are the most vulnerable people in our communities and in the world, and what can we do not to give them magical elixirs of youth, but just helping them have more of the benefits, the treasures that we have had that allow us to live these kinds of lives that we have. So our lives have gotten longer, our lives have gotten, on average, healthier. And then the question is, well, how long can we live? And when you ask people, and I ask people, how long can you live and how long would you like to live? And there have been a lot of polls on this. People say, well, I mean, I think there's a trick question that some people say, how long would you like to live? And some people say, I want to live forever. And then they say, what if you're like a vegetable? And they say, oh no, I don't want to live forever. So I don't want to do that. But I would say the goal is to live healthy as long as possible. And our understanding of how long that is exists within the context of cultural norms. So for right now, polls are, it's about somewhere between 90 and 100, where people say if I can live healthy that long, that's pretty good. But that's just based on where we are. If you would ask that question in 1900, I don't think the answer would have been the same. So there's a cultural norm piece of this, but I think we can all agree, I hope we can all agree, that as much healthy life as possible is an inherent good thing, particularly if we're all using the time that we have to make the world a better place. I know that there's a golf course just behind me, but I've been a long-term advocate of banning the game of golf. And the reason why is I just feel like we as a society invest so much in amazing people like you who are investing your time in here learning. I'd kind of rather have everybody in this room tutoring young kids someplace and volunteering and doing all these wonderful things, harvesting this knowledge that you have, than just hitting a little ball into a hole. Although I'm not a golfer, so I don't fully get it. I'm sure there are golfers here who can tell me. But we value life. The Jewish tradition values life. Every tradition that we're exploring here at Chautauqua, we all value life. And so the question for us on an individual level, when we want to think about what is possible, even if we can use the more aggressive words of hacking aging, we need to know what is aging, how can we measure it, what are the models for how we might think about it differently, and then the question you're all, I think, here for. What are the actual things that we can do? So what is aging? It's actually a really tough question to answer. Chronological aging is pretty easy. Then you just need to look at somebody's birth certificate or driver's license. But biological aging, I mean, we can see it here. We have the Normas and the Harrises and then the people who are just rolling forward. And then there are other people who just for a different mix of reasons, and some kind it can be biological, it can be lifestyle, it can be a whole mix of reasons, have a harder go of it. And you can just see it. People walking around. It's just humans are different. If aging was just one thing, like if there was one central knob of aging, we could say, well, we just need to turn that one knob. And that would be actually great news, because we could just learn what that knob is, and that's a possibility. But there are competing definitions for just the question of what is aging. Some people say it's the depletion of stem cells. These cells, they're constantly regenerating and rejuvenating. Some people say it's an accumulation of inflammation. Some people, like David Sinclair, say it's copying errors, because as you know, your cells are basically copying machines, copying themselves, driven by the stem cells, and as they copy more and more, you get more and more errors, and that's what shows up in gray hairs and things like that. So we don't really know what aging is, and that's why people are saying, well, can we have unified biomarkers, biological markers of aging that can say, all right, this person is, we know they're 70 years old chronologically, but are they 60 years old relative to the full population in their biological age, or are they 80, or are they whatever? And so there are a lot of people who are trying to. That maybe you've heard of epigenetic clocks. So in there's your genome, and then the epigenetics are the little markers that basically regulate up or regulate down different genes, because as you know, every cell in your body, other than a small number of cells like some of your blood cells, contain a nucleus with your genome that has the blueprint for everything. So why isn't every cell trying to develop into a clone of you? And that is because we have these epigenetics, which are almost like traffic cops. And they're saying, all right, these genes are on and these genes are off for doing whatever, making skin or blood or hair or whatever. And it turns out that there is a rate of accumulation of errors in these epigenetics that some people are saying that is an effective biomarker of aging. There are lots of other things. We were talking at breakfast this morning about there's a relatively simple test that is a decent enough, over time has proven a decent enough indicator of lifespan, is that if you're on the ground and someone says, all right, from the ground, stand up, if you can stand up relatively quickly, you're in many ways in good shape, because it says something about balance, about strength. The people who can't get up from the ground, that doesn't mean if you can't get up from the ground that anything bad is going to happen to you individually, but on average, that is a negative biomarker. And there's lots of different biomarkers. What I would say is biology is a biomarker. You could just take anything. Just one piece of hair or a skin or a retinal scan, and you can really tell a lot of people. So there's a lot of work going to try to develop a more universal measure of biological aging. And the reason that's important is because when we think about these different interventions, we need to know what's working at scale. That's why we need to have randomized controlled studies, and it's hard when humans are living 80, 90 years. We don't have 270 years for a 3-generational study when people are trying to move more quickly. And that all of that then leads us to this question of, well, what are the different places where we can look to see, well, what is possible? How hackable should aging be? So one of the places that we can look is into evolution. And here we have some good news, is that evolution hasn't really cared all that much about aging. In the sense, evolution really cares about humans breathing and processing oxygen. That is absolutely central to our evolution, to our being. If somebody says, well, I'm going to make humans who don't need oxygen, I would say that's going to be really hard, because that's whole numbers of hundreds of millions of years, if not longer, of evolutionary history, and you're not going to be able to turn that back. But for aging, the good news is evolution hasn't cared all that much. Grandparents are a huge advantage, even in the kind of hunter-gatherer societies like our ancestors lived, because grandparents had a very important role of looking after kids and passing on wisdom. But it wasn't a hard decision by evolution. And so that's, I think, good news for us, is just intellectually it means there should be some wiggle room in that. Then we can look at humans, both individual humans and groups of humans, and we can look at individual humans like a woman named Jean Calment, who lived in Arles, and she lived to be 122, and she rode her bicycle around town until she was 115, and she ate 2 pounds of chocolate a week, and her famous quote is, "I've only had one wrinkle in my life, and I'm sitting on it." So we can study people like her and these other individual superagers, or we can do things like my friend Nir Barzilai at Albert Einstein and others are doing, where it is to find cohorts, groups. He does on Ashkenazi Jewish centenarians, so people who live past 100, and then sequencing and getting a lot of biological information about these bigger groups of people who all live longer, and to try to understand, well, what is different about them, and are there individual genes or patterns of genes or other things. So that's another area to look. You're all familiar with blue zones, and that's what, although the blue zone, the underlying science, the statistical analysis has become more controversial over the last year or so. But what my friend Dan Buettner did is to look at just the statistics from around the world to try to find what he called blue zones, these areas where people on average live longer than other people. And so he identified a number of the things that I've mentioned earlier about diet, exercise, community, meaning, connected to those blue zones. And even if it should be proven that the blue zone statistical analysis is wrong, the doing of those things is right. And I'll talk about exercise in a moment, but diet, exercise, the science behind those things it's the most convincing the science of everything. And so even if the statistical analysis that Nicosia and Loma Linda, California aren't necessarily better than other places, in my view, it doesn't matter, because doing the blue zones thing is statistically proven to enhance both the health span and maybe lifespan, but certainly health span. And then another area where we can look is at comparative animal studies, to look at somewhat related animals who have different lifespans. So the average mouse lives about 2 years in the wild and about 3 years in a laboratory. But a naked mole rat in the Horn of Africa can live to be a little over 30 years, so about 10 times longer life. And so there's a lot of analysis. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine who's at Rochester is one of the lead scientists on this, trying to say, well, what is it about these naked mole rats? They don't get cancer, they live underground, and so they don't really have any predators, and so that's good, because we have a lot of things that we have evolved with us and with other predator animals, or certainly prey animals, where you have to have a lot of energy, whether you're developing an exoskeleton or horns or all the things that you're using to survive in this competitive world. When you're living kind of on your own underground, you can allocate energy towards survival. So they're studying that. There's the hard clams, which are what you would get if you go to a restaurant and order clams, and they can live up to about 40 years. And the quahog clams in Iceland, they can live, well, the oldest one known was 506 years. But it's kind of sad, because clams, it's like you can tell how old they are because they get rings on their shells like a tree. And so these guys, they brought this thing. It's like, oh my God, this thing is 506 years old. And then it died then. So it could have had many more happy years ahead. And so looking at these differences, and with that, it is something about metabolism that these clams are at the bottom of the ocean in very, very cold water with low metabolism, and that's what we're seeing across the board. And I'll explain this in the context of some drug interventions in a moment, is that our cells are always negotiating between growth and repair. And so when we are young, we want to put a lot of energy into growth and to just getting stronger and getting bigger. And certainly out in the wild, there's a lot of pressure because you're most vulnerable when you are in your youngest state. But to live longer, you kind of want to be in like the equivalent of screensaver mode on your computer. You don't want to be putting all of your energy. You want to be like your grandmother's car parked in the garage that just kind of goes, and that's the way to make a car go a long time, and that's the way for humans. And then probably the most encouraging for us, at least for our topic today, are these immortal jellyfish. So if you want to read a fun novel on the science of human life extension that includes the Mossad and immortal jellyfish, my novel Eternal Sonata is all about that. But the eternal jellyfish, it starts as a polyp and then it grows into a full jellyfish, and then at moments of stress it sinks down to the bottom and becomes a polyp, and then becomes a jellyfish, and then a polyp, and then a jellyfish, and then it becomes a polyp. And it's not so crazy to think that biology has a built-in self-preservation mode. I mean, this, obviously you all will get this because you are here, but you could make this thing, if somebody just wasn't from this planet, and you said, yeah, so a 30-year-old man and a 30-year-old woman have a child, how old is the child? And this person from whatever, it's, oh yeah, it's 60, 30 plus 30. It's like, no. We get a complete reset at 0. And it's so normal that you think, oh, obviously we get a complete reset, but you're getting the genetics from your mother and your father, and that very similar genetics are getting reset. So there's a lot, there are tricks embedded in biology. So we put all of this together, and then that leads us to the question, all right, well, with all of this is so, and we're at this incredible moment with all of this amazing science, and because we're all here, we get the social responsibility part of this. This isn't just about us, but I certainly believe it, that if everybody has more health, it's more opportunity to do what we call in the Everett House mitzvahs, more opportunities to spread wealth and spread knowledge and share ideas and make your contribution to the Everett Jewish House in the envelopes available in the lobby. Whatever your thing is. So I certainly believe in it. And with all of that as the background, let's get to the real stuff. What are the things that you can do now, and I would say even should do now? What are the things that are potentially coming around the corner to keep your eye on? And what are things that are a bigger step beyond that may happen and may bear fruit or not? And the reason why I put these into these groupings is because even the stuff that I think is a little bit out there and a little bit risky, there are all kinds of clinics which are, I spend an obscene amount of my time begging and pleading with my friends to not go to crazy stem cell clinics in Panama because they read something on a website. Our health is very precious. Our health represents 4 billion years of evolutionary trade-offs. If everything was a one-to-one hack, and everything was like, just do this and there's no cost, then biology would be simpler and life would be easier. So here are the kind of easy things. I talked about some of the blue zone things, and you all get this because you're here. But exercise, if we could take all of the benefits of exercise and put it in a pill, it would be the greatest aging pill available. I mean, it would be so many orders of magnitude above metformin or rapamycin or GLP-1s or anything. So for sure, exercise is critical. And so the research on this says if you exercise about an hour a day, you get over the course of your life, 5 extra years of healthy living. And 15 minutes a day gets you about 2 extra years of healthy living compared to a sedentary lifestyle. But that doesn't mean that you need to be doing jump squats in the gym or deadlifts or anything like that. Just walking, just swimming, or just doing pool calisthenics, whatever it is. And you all know this. I mean, you're here. You're in a place where moving is just built into life here, and that is actually a really good thing to be, because people who don't have all of this, there's so many people who are just stuck in a place or stuck in a facility. My mother, who now, so 2 years ago we moved them to an independent living facility in Denver, and my mother now spends about 4 hours on the stationary bicycle in this like with full makeup, and she looks like she's going to. And that's what I tell everybody is if anybody can outpace death on a stationary bicycle, it's my mother. So exercise is important. All of those, the things, the blue zone things, you know that you should be doing them. You are doing them, and that part is great. One of the things that I do is that my philosophy is that you need to. It's better to, if you can handle the information, better to get the information as quickly as possible on the upside. Like right now, if you have a symptom of something, maybe that symptom is for a brand new ailment. But in many cases, certainly when there's a genetic underpinning to whatever caused that symptom is your age plus 9 months old. And so it may be really, really difficult to treat something when it becomes a symptom, because we've all seen this, and I'm sure everybody in this room has friends who've had this cancer diagnosis, like we had with my own father, where at the time of the diagnosis, the news is the cancer is here, it's metastasized, and now it's in all of these places. We were very fortunate and I thought thoughtful about how to treat it. But if you can get ahead of the curve, that, in my view, is really, really important. And I do it for myself, but there's an asterisk, because you have to know who you are. Because you could really, someone without the right personality, getting the kind of information, maybe inconclusive information, maybe information where the best thing is not to take action. I mean, everybody, I remember during the President Obama administration, they had the thing where these pre-existing conditions were going to be covered in the Obamacare and the other health plans. But life is a pre-existing condition. And the only reason why everybody here isn't diagnosed with 20 different diseases is we haven't done the diagnosis. Everybody has early stages of all sorts of things. The more we test for things, and the better our tests become, the more we're going to find things. And so for me, I go every year or two, I go to India. Monica, my partner, is coming down, but her father is a physician in Delhi. And I go to Max Hospital in Delhi, and they have this platinum preventive health check. You go there in the morning, and they have a person assigned to you, and you run from room to room, and you get 80 different tests of just every body system. I get a whole body MRI. And then you come back, they serve you lunch, and then you come back 2 days later, and they have a thing this big, and saying, here's what we found, and here's our recommendation. There are some people who say, if you find something, what happens if you find something bad? But my feeling is I would rather want to know, even though it may be that in many cases doing nothing is the best thing. I just had, last week, I saw my primary care doctor, and I said, well, I had my colonoscopy 5 years ago. Do I need anything more? And they said, well, no, you're clear for 10 years, which is the standard. And I said, yeah, but that seems like a long time. What if I do the Cologuard, the one from the stool sample? And they said, well, I can order that, but if it's not negative, then you would have to do another colonoscopy. And I said, well, that seems like a good deal. I mean, just in the sense that I'd rather have that knowledge, and not everybody is that way. But I think that it's that if you come here for this talk, you're obviously thinking about that. And if everybody did it this way, we would probably break the bank of the American healthcare system. But I don't care. I am on for you. The other thing that I do, and I have a blog post, and maybe I can give it to Arlene or Carol if anybody wants. I don't know if there's a listserv of. Did people sign up for coming to this?
No.
Okay. Maybe we'll put it in a place TBD. Or you can go to jamiemetzl.com. In the blog thing, there's a thing with my eight suggestions for healthy living, and you can find it there. The other thing that I do is it's called the Gallery test by Grail. It's a liquid biopsy, and the basic thing is cancer cells start shedding in your body, and so from a blood sample, you can actually detect traces of up to 50 cancers. Again, they may be very early stage cancers, so you have to have trust that you're not going to go crazy, because it could be that if you get some diagnosis and you do 600 surgeries, the 600 surgeries are the greater threat than this underlying cancer. But what I do is I do that test because my philosophy is it's certainly better to know. So that's this one category is living like you're living, trying to get ahead of the curve, and just keeping an eye on your body. I think that's the thing. Malika, I can tell stories about her because she won't get pissed off at me because she's upstairs in our room working. But when she starts, I've been a marathon runner for many, many years, and she started running, and she got this coach because her goal was to beat me. But this coach was like, she was going faster and faster and longer and all of these things. And I kept saying, I've been doing this a long time. The one lesson I've learned is listen to your body, because little injuries become big injuries if you let them go. But if you just address them in a gentle way, it's the same point as then a little injury. Anyway, so she didn't do it, and she got, like every other 30-year-old woman in New York, got a stress fracture, and it was much harder. So really listen to your body. Don't listen so much that you can't live these wonderful lives, but listen to your body. So that's the one category of stuff that you already know and you're already doing, but I think it's really important. Then there's a second category of these drugs and interventions that I think you're probably hearing a lot about. I want you to show of hands on this one. But metformin is a drug for type 2 diabetes that really is a wonder drug. And it's off patent. It's been around in one form or another since the Middle Ages. It's well tolerated. It's the most prescribed drug in the world. And the way it works for diabetes is it negotiates the uptake of glucose. And that's why it stabilizes diabetics. But in the animal studies of the animals who were diabetic animals taking metformin lived longer than the non-diabetic animals not taking metformin, certainly with mice. So the outcomes of these animal studies with mice have been off the charts great. And there is a belief that many people have that metformin will have a positive impact on humans, non-diabetic and non-pre-diabetic humans. And this friend here, Barzilai, I just mentioned, he has for years been trying to secure sufficient funding to do this study called TAME, which would test this proposition. But I mentioned that metformin is off patent, and because of that, there isn't a lot of money to invest in these kinds of studies, because the goal at the end of the rainbow is just helping people, not having another Lipitor. So metformin, if you have diabetes or pre-diabetes, metformin, I'm sure, is something that you've discussed with your doctor. But there are a lot of people, like when I told this to my parents, my dad was diabetic and took it, and my mother, not diabetic, and she had to study up, and at her 5th session with her primary care doctor, she finally broke down the defenses. but GLP-1s, raise your hand if you've heard of GLP-1s, Ozempic, Wegovy. Yeah, so I think, so now there's a whole lot of talk on, here she is. Now there's a whole lot of talk about GLP-1s. And just like with all these other drugs, people are saying, well, these GLP-1s, they really are miracle drugs. And they certainly are. Certainly for diabetes, they're showing a really positive response. And for obesity, because obesity is certainly a very significant risk factor for all sorts of things. And so that certainly is something that's very positive. And currently, there are studies happening about whether these GLP-1s can help with Alzheimer's and cognitive decline and a whole range of other things. And it may be the case. I would not be surprised if that is proven in one way or another over time. But my advice for people is let guinea pigs be guinea pigs. Because there are a lot of things that sound logical. For example, raise your hand if you've heard of telomeres. So telomeres are many people. It's these caps essentially at the end of your chromosomes, and as you get older, your telomeres get shorter. And so there's this enzyme telomerase, and you can take it and it lengthens your telomeres. And so people were saying, well, great, I'm going to take this, and doctors were prescribing it, and then people were getting cancer as a result of taking this. And the reason is the point that I made before. Biology, this is a 4 billion year evolutionary trade-off. Biology, evolution over 4 billion years isn't doing a whole lot of totally random, wasted stuff. There's a trade-off, and we understand such a small percentage of the total complexity of human biology that there may be a downside that we don't fully appreciate. I was actually in Dubai a few months ago with the people who were the kind of world experts, endocrinologists and others on these GLP-1s. And I was telling them my belief. I said, I just am always cautious when it's a very early stage in the development of a drug and it's being touted as a wonder drug and that everybody is taking it off label for all sorts of reasons. And they walked me through as a group why they thought there was a significant risk associated with GLP-1s. If you have diabetes, if you're morbidly obese, that may be a good risk worth taking. But Malika and I have a friend, and he is a little younger than me, and he wants to qualify for the Boston Marathon. And he's microdosing GLP-1s because he thinks he's going to lose a little weight to make his time faster. And I'm just saying, these interventions are really serious. So I certainly advise caution. Don't be the first person to try an unknown thing. Wait and let it happen and let it develop, let the science develop. And while that's happening, live your Chautauqua lives. And then the third category are these types of interventions that are, again, people are doing them, like these stem cell treatments that people are doing. They're doing them in the Caribbean, they're doing them in Central America, they're doing them in Central Asia at all of these clinics. But these are stem cell transfusions. It's really serious. I mean, you're sparking something, and we don't know enough to know what we are sparking, because what is a cancer cell? A cancer cell is basically a stem cell that's gone wild. So just like with these telomeres, we don't want to be feeding the bad cells. So there's that. There's certain, I think there will be gene therapies targeting aging in one way or another. But again, right now it is too much in the realm of science fiction, even though we live in a world, as I talked about in my talk last summer, where science fiction is fast becoming real. That doesn't mean that everything that we can imagine will become real. And another thing which is actually very exciting are these blood transfusions, which I beg you do not do. But there's a new return of this science called parabiosis, where it's happened since the Middle Ages, but about 20 years ago is this new era of parabiosis, where basically they get a young mouse and an old mouse, and they cut them open on the side, and they sew them together, and they turn them into Siamese mice. I love what's your name? You have such wonderful facial expressions. Everything I'm saying, I'm just like, Anyway, but it turns out that the older mouse got younger. So in terms of sight, in terms of muscle mass, bone density, the older mouse got younger, and the younger mouse got older. And so the question is, well, something must be happening, and the idea was that there's something in the blood serum that is passing in both directions that is making the older mouse biologically younger and the younger mouse biologically older. So there's a whole new field, and there are lots of companies that are trying to figure that out. There was this show, Silicon Valley on HBO, where the rich billionaire guy is hiring people to go do transfusions. This guy, Brian Johnson, he's doing transfusions with his son. Don't do blood transfusions. But having said that, the mouse research is actually pretty exciting. And so what I encourage everybody to do is to do what you're doing now. To say, I'm excited about this. I want to live a long and healthy life. And part of that is the lifestyle stuff. And part of that is keeping an eye on the science. Keeping an eye on what is possible. You don't want to be, you don't want to be the first person doing something crazy. But I would not be surprised if 10 years from now that there is a metformin study and there is a recommendation that people in their, whatever it is, starting at 70, who don't have diabetes might benefit from taking some daily dose of metformin. I think that could easily be the case, but we should not be the first. And more broadly, the question for all of us, and I was telling this to Malika earlier today, is that there are lots of people, when you say, what do you want to do for the vacation? Say, I have such a stressful life, I'm just going to go to Cancun and I'm going to lay on the beach. And it takes special people to say, well, I have this time, I'm going to come to this place and I'm going to be like Robert Oppenheimer in college, and I'm going to run back and forth to 500 different things, and then there's a lecture, but I have to run out of the lecture to get to the meditation, to get, this is the thing. It's to fight for time and then to use the time. And people always ask me when I talk about this stuff, well, one, what if we get too many people? That's the least of our worries. Having healthy, older people contributing their knowledge is the greatest thing. Our problem is crazy young people. We don't have as many wise older people as we can get. And doesn't death confer meaning on life? And like I said, we're never going to defeat death. Death will always be part of the equation for us. But I think life has its own merits, and accepting that death. I mean, the Indian culture is, I think, much better than, I'm in Shiva now, but I think the Indian culture, this idea of the continuity of life is so important. And so I think that while we are investing in living as long and healthy lives as possible, the flip side of that coin is investing in making every second count and be full of meaning. So let me stop there. Thank you. I think we have time for questions.
Yes, if they could speak into the microphone so people outside and downstairs can hear them.
Yep.
Do you have a question? Anybody down there? Would you pass this down the road, please?
Hi, I'm from Virginia.
Yeah.
And recently I did a lot of reading with Stephen Gundry, MD, who was a cardiologist who then got into plant-based
It's great.
research.
Yeah.
And I started taking his pills to...
What's in the pills?
Well, it's a mixture, so he says, and he said they were verified by different laboratories. Right. And what's in them is a combination of a lot of the things that a lot of people who are vegetarians and
Right.
cook, ginger,
Right.
all kinds of things. And I do feel more energetic. I
Well, you look great. So, you look fantastic, so it's obviously working. And so, like, and like, I was taking the curcumin pills, and Malika was saying, well, I'm just cooking with this every night. And so I do think that certainly a balanced diet and eating a plant-based diet. Dean Ornish, I think, is fantastic on plant-based. And then the reason I made that funny face is I get a little suspicious of the people who are selling like vegetable pills. And so my thing is, if you should be eating ginger and garlic and greens, like the best thing is ginger and garlic and greens. I mean, I take a multivitamin, a Centrum, in the morning, but I think it's great. But I think plant-based diet is so proven. I think that it's so healthy, let alone, I mean, if it's for your health, for the planet's health, I think it's a great thing to have a plant. And to use animal products, I'm certainly not a vegetarian, but to use animal products not like a big steak, but like a stir fry or just something like that, so you're getting a balance. And eat the rainbow for the health of your microbiome. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you foresee any type of a cure for Alzheimer's?
I think we'll have treatments. I mean, right now, it feels like there's promise. Like this Aduhelm got approved, and then it was it doesn't really work. I think that we'll continue to make improvements. And we look as people live longer and healthier. We used to die of infectious diseases, and now we die of chronic diseases because we've overcome the issue. So, will we ever cure it? I don't know, because even if we cure it, there'll be a next thing. And so I think treating it better, and it's certainly cognitive decline is one of the most painful things because of just what it is, and because the treatments are still not that great. So I don't know the answer to that, but it's a hard one because we understand the amyloid plaque hypothesis. It gets proven and then unproven and then reproven and unproven. We just know so little about it. So treatments will definitely get better, but we're far away from it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As a healthcare professional, I would like to make a comment.
Sure.
The first day in a pharmacology course, the professor said, just remember, everything you prescribe happens to be a poison that has certain beneficial side effects.
Yes.
So that should be taken into
I
account.
so agree. What kind of doctor?
Pardon me?
What kind of doctor are you?
Practice dentistry.
Great. Yeah, it's so true, and that's why he said that on his first day of pharmacology, he said every drug that you take is also a poison, but you're taking it because it has this benefit. And so that's why I think there's no free lunch with all this stuff. And so every wonder drug of the past, it turns out the story was more complicated of all of these things. And the story is just more complicated. That doesn't mean we don't take drugs, but you should know why you're doing it. And that's why, because this issue of aging, we all want to live longer and we want to live healthier. And if you have a podcast and somebody is a professor at Harvard Medical School and they're saying, this is what I do, I encourage you to do that, and you should ask your doctor for your own advice, and I'm selling this supplement, it always makes me a little bit. Yeah.
I wanted to comment that in 1979, I was 50 pounds overweight and lazy and fat. And at that time, I started running and walking and have now done 93,000 miles.
Wow.
And, but I wanted to ask you about your comments about sugar and caffeine.
Yes. So this same point as our other friend in the back. Sugar is a poison. You should know why you're taking it. And for me, I have a secret second life as a chocolate shaman. When I'm at the keynote speaker at tech conferences, I lead these sacred cacao ceremonies where I say you can have all the experiences of drugs and you just drink chocolate milk and let your mind be. So I have hot chocolate, which is like 50 billion calories every morning, but white sugar and processed white flour are not good for you. I'm saying if you're eating them, make sure you're getting a lot of joy, because joy is good for you. And so that's like, I think it's a balance. But you're a role model of just keeping moving. Keeping moving is so important, just because your body, and especially as we all get older, when we stop, our body is listening to those cues. Yeah, and then we have a few here who've been very patient.
As another healthcare provider, I want to point out that Cologuard has about a 13 to 14% false positive rate.
I know.
Meaning that as soon as somebody gets a positive test, they're on track to get another colonoscopy, which there's one chance in 7 or so that is not going to show anything.
I totally
and it has
agree.
risks involved.
No, I totally agree, and that was why I said, like, for me with my Cologuard, I said I may get, because when I first did it, when I had my colonoscopy 5 years ago, before that I did Cologuard and it was inconclusive, and that was why. And my doctor said that, and I said, well, I would rather make the decision that I have this information, and I'm not going to do the colonoscopy for 5 years. That was why I said, you have to know, because if the message is, everybody get every test, we're going to bankrupt the country.
Well, I just want people in the room to understand that if they're encouraging their doctor to give them this test, there's a significant risk that the positive test will be a false positive.
Yeah.
And the second thing I want to say is that metformin has significant GI side effects.
It does.
And many people can't tolerate the drug.
Yep.
It also lowers the vitamin B12 level in the blood.
And muscle wasting also,
and metformin, like other drugs in the class, can cause lactic acidosis, which is relatively uncommon, but sometimes fatal.
Yep.
So I think we need to be very careful about
Exactly.
encouraging people to take drugs based on the kind of science you can cite.
That was why I said, don't take drugs based on the science. That was my exact message for exactly those reasons. That these are serious things. If you have diabetes, by all means take metformin. If somebody says metformin it helps you counter aging, I'm very cautious about that, even though many people are doing that. Yeah.
Okay, this is just a quick question, because for me, I have a sleep problem.
Me too.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we're in the Jewish house. It's called Mishigas.
Now you answered my question. I haven't had a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you how many years.
Me
because
too.
It'll tell you
Yep.
my age, and I'm taking medication.
Yeah.
And I've heard that the toxins are going to build up in my body.
I've heard it too, but not sleeping also gets.
Hold the mic right by you.
Yeah, so can I just say?
So my question
yeah.
is, because you haven't mentioned sleeping.
Sleeping, well, let me, this is,
I don't want to
so here's my few thoughts on
I don't want to
sleeping.
get the answer.
No, my few thoughts on sleeping. Sleeping is very important. But this story that everybody needs 7 to 8 hours of sleep, I don't think is accurate. I think just different people have different sleep needs. So because we've said if you're not getting 8 hours of sleep, you're going to get dementia and drive your car off a cliff. It creates all of this anxiety. So one, I would say, however much sleep you're getting is, don't make yourself crazy, as I do. And then second is cognitive behavioral therapy has proven among all of the interventions the most, I didn't answer caffeine, I'll come back to caffeine, has proven the most effective. So there's CBT for sleep, and I would certainly encourage you to try that and all these kind of mental games of counting and all this. But I also I don't drink caffeine, although the science of caffeine seems pretty good. What I do is I have caffeine maybe once every week or two when I have a terrible night's sleep. Then I'll drink it, and then I'm like a normal person on crack because I have just so much energy. And so I also take sleep medications. I've made up this thing for me. I like have like 4 different ones, and I kind of rotate so I don't get. But I haven't cracked that. But what I would say is the pressure. I think this messaging that you don't get sleep, you're gonna you're going to get Alzheimer's. Or I think that alone is harmful. So and
I like your answer.
yeah. So it's just like and that's the other thing is like the goal of life is meaning and happiness. And so if we're making ourselves crazy and all day thinking, oh, I'm really screwed. I didn't sleep, and now this is going to happen. It's taking so this self-acceptance and just recognition. Like I said, we all have multiple pre-existing conditions, and we just have to kind of accept that. And there's no such thing as what we're imagining as perfect health. Nobody has it.
Time for one more.
Yeah. Well, can we do two more? Because this guy's been so patient. He's been right here.
This guy.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. He's going to talk about glucose.
For sleep, I recommend lavender under your pillow.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And they're selling it at the farmer's market.
Yeah.
In order to,
Lavender. Yeah.
in order to maintain our relation with our primary care doctor this year, we had to join something called MDVIP.
Yeah.
Now,
That's yours.
I didn't, it was reluctant. However, in order to be part of this group, my husband and I were in an office for 4 hours with a nurse going through testing. Huge amount of blood tests. I went to Cleveland, and then after 4 hours, about 2 weeks later, we met with our doctor for an hour and a half, and he went through pages and pages and pages.
Wonderful. That's great.
And while we were sitting there, we had to fill out a 20-page form of everything we did in our life.
So this is a functional medicine. It sounds like that's
What they are saying, though, is they're using this information to help come up with ways of how to.
I think it's
to
wonderful.
make.
Yeah.
So they are now national. They've been around for 20 years, and I knew nothing about it.
I think the only thing is they should be paying you for this data. I think the data that you have provided is in some ways more valuable to them than. But I think that is the future of healthcare is driven by data. And I write in this book, Super Universe. I have a lot about it. Yeah. Yeah.
You have a wonderful disposition. You default to smile. And
Since I was a little kid, I can't do anything about it.
I was wondering, having been in India, I'm wondering whether you came across Dr. Kataria's yoga laughter.
You know, it's funny that I did because Malika, where's Malika? Malika, are you there? Or did she go back up? All right, she just, anyway, so her home in South Delhi, it abuts this park. And so I go running when I'm staying with her family around the park. And in the middle are these yoga laughter guys. And you have this group of people, and they're just sitting there, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and they're just laughing. And like, again, the greatest interventions are the free ones. It's happiness, joy, smiling, community, fruits and vegetables, exercise, all of these kinds of things. All of these fancy things, all of these drugs may help on the margins, but they aren't going to be transformative. So I think everybody should keep laughing. So just so you know, I'm speaking tomorrow at 12:30. It's called AI from Mount Sinai, about AI and the future of human spirituality. And I volunteered to do an Ask Me Anything if you guys want later in the week, which would just be kind of an open mic where we can talk about anything, including politics and anything else. Thank you so much.